Hey everyone, Xeon over here from Nintendo Life. So the latest rumor on the street, on the internet, on the Game FAQs forums is that, of course, a Nintendo Switch 2, a Nintendo Switch Pro is potentially coming out at the end of 2024. Now we know you've heard this same old song and dance over and over again, but it seems like this time things might be a little different. And I feel like we don't always say that. But to chat all about it and kind of what we would like to see from a Switch 2 or a Switch Pro, I'm joined by the fantastic Mr. Felix.
What? It's me before Alex. Haha, take that, Alex.
Well, and I guess you know who else is here, Alex.
My name is Guy Incognito. That's a Simpsons reference.
I was like, is that code for Gex? Are you just chameleoning around out here or something? But no, okay. So Alex, you've been around the video game news space for a while.
I'm old, yeah.
Yeah, I was just, you're like a year older than me, 6 months, something like that, maybe if that. But what do you make of this rumor so far?
Well, to be honest, to be brutally honest, we don't really cover this sort of stuff on the channel because so much of it is unsubstantiated. And
it does really like come and go, doesn't it?
Yeah. And at the moment, obviously, these rumors have not been confirmed one way or the other. However, the big difference here is kind of twofold, I reckon. One is because it's such an uninteresting rumor. It's not like, hey, it's 4K and it's going to be made out of bees or anything like that. It's just like, oh yeah, it's coming and it's going to have an LCD screen. Bye.
Which is like, what?
Yeah.
What? But I see what you mean. Okay.
Yeah, and there's not really there's not a great deal of reason to report on this if you don't yourself believe it to be true. And secondly, the sources, or at least the VGC and Eurogamer, they're very accredited, and they don't tend to release information like this unless it has a kernel of truth. And I'm sure we're not seeing the whole situation here, but I think that this is a rumor worth keeping on the radar.
Yeah, I suppose you're right. It's not just like insert name sent in this random picture of a blurry Switch, or like said,
yeah.
my uncle Jim, who works down in Redmond, Washington. It's not something like that. Like this is our jobs, and it's VGC's jobs too to be correct about this stuff. So I see what you mean in that regard. Well, and I guess the rumor as well right now, basically what they're saying is that VGC spoke to somebody about this that claims that a Switch 2 of sorts could come in the second half of 2024. To me, that personally, I guess that would make sense because of I guess maybe a launch in November, but also the Switch launched in March, so Nintendo's going to do whatever they want. But VGC also says that potentially dev kits are in the hands of key developers. And then like you were saying, that this could launch with an LCD screen to sort of bring the cost down on units, which at first when I heard LCD screen, like my brain was like, that's backwards, right? That's going back in time. But that's what Nintendo also likes to do.
Yeah, I think the fact that it's not, sort of the fact that they're coming out and they're saying, oh, it's going to be, in terms of like the screen, arguably a downgrade over the Switch OLED, which we have now. Again, kind of further substantiates the plausibility of this. Having said that, also, LCD technology has come on a long way since the original Switch. And even though I don't think it's, if this does come to fruition, it's probably not going to look as nice as the Switch OLED screen, but they've already done it with the Switch. I wouldn't be surprised if a successor had an OLED version released later down the line. And I've seen some people say, well, why didn't they just release both at launch? And it's like, you've clearly never manufactured anything in your life. And nor have I, but even I know that producing two versions of something is infinitely more complicated than just releasing one. Like, how many of the OLED version do you make as opposed to the LCD? How do you balance that? You need to do market research or not. It's just not worth it.
Yeah, I'm even surprised that like Nintendo, back when they first launched the Switch, that they did the gray Joy-Con unit and the blue and red one. Like I understand the two needs for it, but it is it is an interesting thing, and I guess it's kind of just like releasing different color GameCubes or something like that. Maybe it's easier, but
yeah,
but I agree.
Just a shell is a lot simpler than an entirely different screen.
Sure. Felix, how would you where do you stand on wanting a Switch Pro? I guess at this point.
So I really want a more powerful Switch because it's just games now. You can see that the developers are struggling with the game like even Tears of the Kingdom. Games that are made for the Switch and really, really optimized still are lagging in frame rates, which, just compared to the PlayStation and Xbox, they are really behind with the graphics. I'm not saying that's a problem, but I would like to see a bump so it just looks nicer when playing on the TV and just looks nicer overall, and developers has more power to utilize. So I think it's about time that we see an upgrade. Now, what this upgrade can include, I don't really know, because the Switch is so perfect in so many ways. The only thing is that it's just a lot less powerful than a lot of other consoles, making it like inferior graphical wise. Like if they have to port games to the Switch, they always look worse and that stuff, but then you can take it on the go. So I mean, just a more powerful Switch, that would kind of do it for me. I mean, a better Joy-Cons that don't drift, that would also be a very, very welcome addition. But the Switch is just awesome. Ever since I saw it the first time, it's just been this genius idea that's it's almost hard to see what they can improve.
Well, I think you talk about power and things like that. A lot of people have been talking about things like the Steam Deck and how a Switch successor couldn't be too powerful because then you'd lose the battery life. You'd end up with something like the Steam Deck, which the Steam Deck is great. I love mine to death, but it does not have a great battery life. That is undeniable. However, that's because it's essentially PC architecture, whereas a custom chipset, and this goes back to previous leaks and rumors regarding NVIDIA's Tegra. Not that this new custom chipset would be Tegra, arguably. If it's custom made, it doesn't have those limitations. It doesn't have to be created with anything in mind that Nintendo doesn't want it to. For example, I'd be surprised if a Switch successor wouldn't be backwards compatible, but it is possible. Having said that, I do think that would be a rubbish move. You only need to look at things like this isn't exactly an equal comparison, but when the NES was released, everyone went mad for it, in America at least. Everyone went mad for it, and then the SNES came out, and I think a lot of the response for a lot of people was, at least sort of parents and things, is, but we already have a Nintendo. Why would we get another one? And why would I buy a new one that we got all these old games and those are going to go to waste? And I think certainly when it comes to people's digital purchases, it would be mad if those purchases didn't carry over. I know we didn't have purchases carry over with the Wii U, but the 5 people that bought a Wii U were quite upset.
When you bring up a good point too with backwards compatibility, because VGC also stated in the news article that they put out that I'm going to quote this here. Nintendo has said it wants to convert as many of Switch's 100 million plus user base as possible to its next system, although some third-party publishers are said to have expressed concern that legacy support for Switch games could negatively affect sales of next-gen titles. So it sounds like Nintendo is trying to kind of decide on what route they should take with backwards compatibility, and that's worrying, right? Because you would think that with how many units they've sold and how many games are out there and how much effort all of these developers have put into porting their games to the Switch, that backwards compatibility would just be a no-brainer. But it sounds like, some third-party publishers maybe don't want backwards compatibility, so that way they can re-release their games again. And I feel like Nintendo will do the right thing here and not allow the money to talk that much, This news article also says that the Switch successor will take physical game cartridges as well, so we have that at least to hope that, it still will play the same kind of cartridges. But I don't know, there's just a lot to a lot to think about there.
I think since it says it also will take cartridges, I think the chance is pretty high that it will be backwards compatible, because, I mean, you had the DS and 3DS, and although you can't play 3DS games on DS, because it was like the same cartridge system, you could still play the DS games on the 3DS. And the reason you can't play the Wii U games like physically is because there isn't a disc like a drive on the Switch. Now, what they could do, which I think would be a really cool like little thing add-on, you could buy a disc drive and then connect it via USB to the dock so you can play your old. That would just be so amazing. But I know it's not gonna happen. But that's like my dream
do that
wish.
Because why would they sell a peripheral for something? You know, they sell the peripheral. They're not going to be releasing those old games on disc. So there's no incentive for them.
That was a dream, like in 2018, though. I'll give you that. I do, like, I remember for a while just like thinking, you know, is that going to happen? But then, you know, they just kept porting more and more Wii U games. And it was like, all right, well, you guys are really making it hard to miss the Wii U. But
well, I'm not talking only about the Wii U, but also like Wii games. That would just be cool since you have the motion. It wouldn't work. I'm just dreaming here. Okay, let a man be a man. I don't know what.
Well, I guess of course, it's so, you know, Xbox did the crazy thing, and they made original Xbox games backwards compatible. I mean, you do have to be connected to the internet, so that way so that way you can download like the most recent like spruced up version of the game in order to play it on your Xbox.
Yeah, the disc essentially acts as like a key and nothing else.
Right, but it's such a cool move, and I would love Nintendo to do something like that. But even just with Switch games, you know, like it would be devastating if the Switch successor wasn't backwards compatible. To me, at least. I mean, I guess I can't speak for everyone, but I feel like everybody shares that sentiment. I don't know.
I feel like they would be shooting themselves in the foot if they didn't do it, because there's just such a big user base with all the games that you have digitally and stuff. So many people would be mad, especially when the Switch is that big. And Nintendo is known for having like backwards compatibility. You have the DS Lite.
They've got fantastic backwards compatibility overall, certainly with their handheld devices. The DS had a second cartridge slot to play GBA games. There was no need to do that. It would have been far cheaper to just release it without.
Well, actually, when they released the Nintendo DSi, they sacrificed that for the internet.
I said the DS, not the DSi.
DS family of systems. Pushes.
But even so, you know, and then the 3DS came out. You could play the DS games on there as well. And you know, the GBA could play the Game Boy Color games and the original Game Boy games as well. There's loads. There's a huge, rich history with Nintendo when it comes to backwards compatibility, and also I do think they'd be foolish not to. Because, you know, on the one hand, you could say, well, why would I buy a new Switch a Switch successor when my current Switch still works? You know, and I think a lot of people are expecting, if this does go ahead, that Nintendo will be releasing, like, the next Mario game, like, on the Switch and Switch's successor, you know, like God of War Ragnarok's on PS4 and on PS5. I don't think Nintendo will do that. They may do some crossover bits and bobs, and some, you know, third-party developers will no doubt continue to support the like the Switch and its successor, but Nintendo historically does not give that much like simultaneous support, so that when it does happen with things like Twilight Princess and Breath of the Wild, it's kind of like, whoa, it's so weird to see Breath of the Wild on a Wii U. You know, it's Nintendo don't tend to do that, and I think they just go, okay, yeah, Switch still exists, games still work, and you can play all those games on our new system as well. I think that's sensible. That's the angle they're going to go for.
Actually, I would be completely fine with that, just because you buy the new console to play the new games, and you kind of feel like also, especially when I bought the PS5, you felt like, but they aren't really utilizing the PS5 because they still have to make the games compatible to the PlayStation 4, and it's like, but then why did I buy the PlayStation 5? So to Nintendo, it would also be like, you know, I don't think it would hurt them that much to make it backwards compatible to the Switch, because you buy the new console to play the new games.
Yeah, I think the thing is that Nintendo, for the longest time, even though they are a hardware manufacturer as well, Nintendo have been relying on their IP for the longest time. Like, they can't rely on it entirely. I mean, you're not to beat a dead horse, but look at the Wii U. But their IP sells so much that people will scream online and say, Nintendo just released Zelda on Steam, like they would ever do that. So, yeah, I think their IP can carry, and they're not going to be releasing, as I say, the next Mario game on both, unless it is like, hey, we've got, Super Mario Wonder coming out on Switch, and then Super Mario Wonder Deluxe on the Switch successor, or something like that,
Well, I mean, I guess if you look at the lineup of games that are coming out this year, or for the foreseeable future of the Switch, we've got Super Mario RPG, Detective Pikachu, WarioWare Move It, and nothing against those games, except for Detective Pikachu maybe looks a little rough around the edges.
That's kind.
We have Super Mario. Yeah, we have Super Mario Bros. Wonder as well, but aside from that game, the rest of these titles kind of reeks of the 3DS is dying. And I don't mean any offense to WarioWare Move It. I'm so stoked for that game. I can't believe Super Mario RPG Remake is real, but none of these titles, well, maybe Super Mario RPG would be like something to push the hardcore to a Switch to, but all these games feel very kind of
they feel end of life
in some aspects,
don't they?
Yeah, they do.
Not bad games by any means, but also not enormously. I don't want to sound cruel, but they're not enormously like adventurous or risky. They're just like, yep, here's a couple of games. They'll probably sell reasonably, and then we'll move on, kind of thing.
Yeah, but it's not like a new Animal Crossing, a new Smash Bros.
Yeah.
We have Mario Wonder, which is still, that's actually that's a huge game coming out.
Yeah, that's the exception, but again, that could be kind of like the Mario swan song to the Switch kind of thing.
Yeah, or it's like one of the games they have at launch for the new Switch, like with Breath of the Wild.
Right, and that's kind of what I mean right now too. I think is that like all the titles that we know about coming to the standard Switch right now are just it doesn't really seem like anything that would sell you on a Switch 2 necessarily, and so maybe they are holding some stuff back for a Switch Pro announcement, because I mean, we know, right, Metroid Prime 4 is somewhere in a closet, or it's being worked on, or who knows at
Mario
this point.
Kart also has to be somewhere, like a new Mario Kart. It's
that's a good point, especially after, is the next wave, does that come out? That's this year still, right?
That comes out before the year ends, essentially. So, okay. I mean, that lines up also with the report of it being the later half of next year.
Well, I guess, Alex, do you have anything that when you think of a Switch Pro or a Switch 2, is there something that you feel that you want it to have that maybe the Switch doesn't right now, beyond just better graphics?
To be honest, the Switch has so many sort of like gimmicky features to it. I mean, not loads, not dripping with them, but it's got like the IR camera and HD rumble. And I like HD rumble, don't get me wrong. But the IR camera has barely been used. And everything else about it, the Joy-Con can do a lot. But what they mostly do is they sit connected to the Switch, and people use them as controllers, And I think it's still a good idea to have the Joy-Con as detachable, because it's nice to be able to have parity rather than you have to have a Pro controller, even though I would recommend one. If you just want the bare bones, or, if you just want to take it out and about, which I do occasionally if I leave the house, I will, prop the Switch up on its lovely kickstand. The OLED's got a lovely kickstand. And
so much better. Chef's
so
kiss.
much better. And I'll have the Joy-Con detached, and I'll have them just one in each hand. And I think that's
my favorite way of playing.
option.
I love that.
It's really comfy, isn't it? You just can't be too far away. That's something I'd like. Better Bluetooth connectivity, and a better Wi-Fi chip, so that it can download at a reasonable pace, because it can be kind of painful when you get a game and it's like, it's downloading, and how big is it? Oh, it's 2 gigabytes. How long is it going to take? 20 minutes. And it's like, that's not modern. Guys, come on.
And then your game starts slowing down because you're installing or downloading something. Like I've noticed that start to happen to my Switch in the past year at least, and I don't know if that's...
I've only noticed it on one game, and that's Pikmin. because I was playing Pikmin. I meant to do a video about this and I never got around to it because I had more important things to do. But I was playing Pikmin 1 and I was getting some weird issues with it and I couldn't recreate them. But like loading was taking a weirdly long time and stuff like that. And it was because I was downloading Pikmin 2. For some reason, downloading like that had caused some sort of bottleneck. It was really bizarre. But I've not seen it on anything else.
So, talking about the Joy-Cons, I know I mentioned I want better Joy-Cons without, like, drift, but it's kind of like, it's really nice to have them detachable, but the whole thing where you can play 2 players, it's kind of like a double-edged sword, because on one end, it's awesome to have these 2 controllers, so you can play, like, 2 people only on one Switch, but it also means that you kind of sacrifice some comfortability when you play alone, because they have to be also work when you put them on the side, and if they had some form of grip to them, you wouldn't really be able to hold them on the side. I don't know if this makes sense, but I hope you get what I mean.
I know exactly what you mean, and I think at the end of the day that it's one of those situations where if you make them, and this is basically just reiterating your point, make them more comfortable in one area, you make them less comfortable in the other, and maybe there's some beautiful middle ground that nobody's thought of, but I don't think it exists. And
no,
to be honest, I think that the Joy-Con, when they're used on their side, it's never for like, nobody's using Joy-Con on their side to play in a competitive Smash tournament, although they should. That would be hilarious. You know, it's used for quick plays.
Evo's this weekend, so maybe Alex, it's your time.
I mean, I have some friends because they started using only half a Joy-Con when we played in school, when I brought my Switch. Now they only want to play with one Joy-Con because
no way!
Yeah. So it's like, do you want a Pro Controller? No, I want the Plus Joy-Con and the other one wants the minus because that's what they're used to.
At the end of the day, Joy-Con on their side, they're for quick gaming sessions. It's not for anything, you know, hardcore or even long-term. It's just for something quick and snappy to do, you know, oh, do you fancy a game of this? Well, I've got a Switch. It comes with 2 controllers. Well, blah. There you go. We can have a bit of Mario Kart. It's a bit of fun, you know? If you're on a plane with a friend or a partner, and then when you hold the Switch properly, that it's fine with the Joy-Con. I think that's something that a lot of people forget. It's fine. The drifting is an issue, though.
Well, it's weird, though, because, like, you know, we say, like, oh, like, it'd be great to have the best of both worlds, but that's the dream, you know, when it comes to controls. Like, it'd be so cool to have a controller that can be split in half and also be comfortable. But we were probably saying something very similar when it came to, you know, Nintendo having the 3DS and the Wii U, or the Wii and the DS, and like, oh, wouldn't it be great if Nintendo just made a system that could be played at home on the TV and portably? Gosh,
yeah.
And then the
Switch
made it
is
happen.
kind of the dream, and now it's just here, and now we've gotten used to it.
I mean, at the end of the day, we don't really know what we want, do we? You know, we think we know what we want, but when it comes to it, it's like, I saw the Wii U and I was like, that's so cool. They're going to do so many cool games with it. Admittedly, it wasn't my fault that they didn't do so many cool games with the idea. But yeah, you know, we don't know what we want as an audience. I know that sounds contradictory, and there's probably people that going down to the comments going, well, that's ridiculous. I know what I want. I just want blank. And you don't really know what you want until you've got it.
Well, and Felix and Craig from Pure Xbox and we did a video a while back where we talked about everything that we don't want out of the Switch 2. So at least we know what we don't want. So that's good at least.
But I think they need. We've talked about the games that they have to bring them over, but they also need to bring over NSO because they've been building it up so long. I feel it would be a shame to totally reamp this, and you have to buy digital games that. Everything, just keep it the same. Even though it's not good, just keep it consistent and then add more games to NSO, even though it's way too expensive, at least for like N64 games. Just add more stuff to the service, make it worthwhile our money, and yeah.
GameCube for NSO on Switch 2. Man,
it could happen.
I don't know. Probably not at this.
Well, no, because they're just porting like Pikmin.
Right, exactly. I mean, you see stuff like that, and it makes you think, well, then maybe we won't get that,
But should they? Do you think they're going to bring over like NSO and that whole thing? Have they said anything about it? I can't remember.
I could see them doing that.
I could see them doing it. Yeah. They haven't said anything because they haven't announced it.
New eShop, please. Oh my god, I need a better eShop. I hate the Switch's That's like one of the main gripes I have for the Switch. It's eShop.
It's interesting because when the Switch first came out, it was fine. But I think because it's got so much on there now, which Nintendo just didn't plan for, that it's just like, it's like going through treacle.
It's on the last rep of that gym session and it just can't hold it anymore.
Its muscles are just maxed out, but it's too much weight.
I'd really like to see, some like even just marginal performance improvements for older games as well, if there is backwards compatibility. So not as many frame drops in Tears of the Kingdom, for example. Just allowing some of the greater power to be put to simple use. And, maybe they could just unlock things a bit. I don't think that would work. I'm not a technology man, though.
60 FPS. 60 FPS.
Nintendo,
that's pushing
they're wizards.
Yeah, that's pushing it, I think. It's locked at 30 for a reason.
Just a solid 30 would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I think people downplay 30 frames a second, but for the most part, it's absolutely fine. Oh, you know what? Go mad. Why don't you do 40? 40's a nice one, because if you've got a 120 hertz screen, the refresh rate will match perfectly.
Huh.
We both just did that at the same time, Felix. It was like the same sound effect.
We're so great. In sync.
This might be a tough question, I guess, and there's no right or wrong answer here. But what resolution do you want out of a Switch Pro? And how would you feel if it wasn't what you want?
I mean, 1080p is still largely fine for TV gameplay, and 720 is fine for handheld. I mean, I wouldn't mind a bit of a bump in resolution. Even if it was just like 1440p, that would be kind of cool. But at the end of the day, Does anybody sit down and play Super Mario Odyssey and go, wow, I can't believe I can see all the pixels? Of course they don't. You'll get some people who will bemoan a resolution of 900p, but Nintendo at the end of the day appeals to a market far larger than I think we can reasonably imagine, just in the sense that human brains aren't designed to cope with really large numbers in that sort of context. And so, if 900p Super Mario Odyssey, yeah, obviously they want the games to look as good as possible, but maybe they're going to do some DLSS kind of upscaling type thing, 4K upscaling maybe, or 1440p, or maybe they're just going to go, you know what? Let's do a Wii 480p. Not as in they're going to bring it down to 480p, but same resolution as the previous gen. I think honestly, that would be fine. I don't think it's a big deal, personally. A good 1080p looks better than a bad 4K.
I would like a better resolution, mainly because when I've been playing on my TV, I don't know why it's only the home menu, but that just doesn't look very good on the TV. I don't know, it looks very pixelated.
I mean, the home menu is 720p.
Yeah, maybe that's the thing. So if they could just make it look better. I think my main reason why I wanted to look better is when I look at the PlayStation and everything is in 4K, it just looks so much nicer. On the handheld, I don't care because there it looks fine, it's that small, but when you play on a 4K TV, you start to really see the differences between 4K and 1080p. I'm not saying they have to do 4K because they are not going to do that, but they just get some better anti-aliasing. I think 1080p is fine. Like you say, what's the resolution? 442p.
No, 1440.
Yeah, but something like that I would be fine with. But the dream is 4K, of course.
But I think hearing both of you talk about it, I think I really would like to see. I'd be happy if the Switch successor came out with still 720p in handheld, but better performance at least. Because it can be jarring depending on the game that you play.
Xenoblade, especially on handheld.
Yeah.
Well, that's because it's not displaying at the native resolution, is it? It's scaled.
I know, but it just looks rough. So less situations like that would be ideal.
Yeah, and so having better performance in handheld and sticking at 720, I'm happy with that. And then having better performance on console, on TV or docked mode. But then maybe maybe a better resolution. You know, I wouldn't complain if we got a 4K Switch. Because I feel you. Like,
I don't think anyone would.
Right. You know, it can be really even more jarring to go from, you know, playing something on even PlayStation 4. Like, I live in Oregon, and so my partner and I just started up Days Gone the other day, which is set in Oregon. And that game is, oh my gosh, it's very strange, and I'm not going to go into it. But at times, it's absolutely beautiful. And Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild are pretty in their own rights, but it would be so cool to see them boosted even more. And yeah. So I think I would like to see, you know, as long as if they keep the resolutions, cool. But better performance is really, I think, all I want at the end of the day. But
so better performances, I think, is the most important thing. Like, I think I've seen, especially here in the latest Switch games, is like NPCs in the background are often like at 5 frames per second, which to me that really bothers. Well, it doesn't really bother me, but it does bother me when I'm playing Kirby,
feel ya.
And then you see this enemy in the distance, and it's just like going 5 frames per second, or some like NPCs in Splatoon 3 in the background are also like really low FPS, and I wish there was less situations like that. Again, it's not a deal breaker, but we're talking about things we would like to improve. I would like not to see that on the next Switch.
Nintendo and Pokemon Company right now are listening in, and they're like, darn it, they found out our secret.
I was literally about to say, you better not have a look at Pokemon again, because if you go back to that now, it looks even rougher than you remember. But I think the key thing is, a bump in performance. I think that's a given, you know. But at the end of the day, what's most important and what the Switch has proved in its lifetime is that performance is not only not everything, it's not that important when it comes to, like, certainly first-party stuff. At the end of the day, a system is only as good as the games. And you can have games run, that run on no power at all, and that can run at, like 600 frames a second if you were to uncap it in theory on the Switch and still be fantastic. It's not the be-all and end-all. The be-all and end-all is the software. Every single time, the software is the most important thing. And it's Nintendo. I have reasonable faith after the Wii U.
The games are good, then I'll be happy.
Well said. Well, of course, I imagine all of you have your own hopes and dreams for a Switch Pro or a Switch 2, Super Switch, whatever you want to call it. Let us know in the comments down below what you would like to see from it, what your dream game is. Let us know if you want Golden Sun to be remade in glorious HD 2D visuals. Thank you, Xeon. What a beautiful idea. Maybe you want Street Pass to come to the Switch 2. Maybe that'll be the selling point. Could you imagine? Put the 2DS away, Xeon. Put it away. Of course, let us know all your thoughts down below. And of course, thank you all so much for watching. We've been enjoying. I've had a good time chatting about this.
It's a very interesting topic, and I'll talk about it any day I'll get the chance.
Good. And it's not something like I think I don't need it right now, but it's like, thinking about it more and more, it's like,
You start to get a bit excited, like when you think back.
Yeah, you get the butterflies in your stomach. Is that what they say, or is that a different feeling?
That's more nervous when you're about to do a sort of a teenage adult thing for the first time, isn't it?
Oh, right, of course. Okay, well, thank you all so much for watching. I'm Zian from Nintendo Life. Alex, Felix, it's been a blast.
Metroid Prime Blast Ball.
Stay safe out there and play some Pinball Hunters. What was that game called again?
Metroid Prime Pinball.
Link's Pinball Training.
Oh,